If you work for the Catholic Church and want to transform the culture of your parish and put more souls in the pews, we're here to help. I'm John Konz, and this is the Catholic Ministry Professionals Podcast, your favorite leadership development podcast for Catholic churches. Each week, you can expect engaging discussions, expert interviews, and actionable advice to help you move Jesus' mission forward in your parish. Today, we're joined by Mike Ward, the Director of Pastoral Ministry at St. Norbert and Our Lady of the Brook Parish in Northbrook, Illinois. Someone who has spent years walking with families, volunteers, and parish staff through the key conversations that move people toward Jesus. So we're here to help unpack us why he's here to help us unpack why the right conversations at the right time can change everything in parish ministry. Mike, welcome to the podcast.
John, good to be back. Thanks for having me.
I want you to know we can tell a lot about a guest by what they do when the music starts. So when your head starts bobbing, we know we're in for a good time today.
You know, I am so glad you have never changed the intro music to this podcast. Like, it's so good.
Say more about that.
You know, it catches you in, and then you just know that good conversation's about to follow.
The party has started.
Yep.
Yeah, and we go way back for our listeners. You've been on the podcast once before. This is I believe, just your second time on.
Yeah.
But we're good friends. We're always texting each other in the background about ministry, the successes and frustrations and everything in between.
Yep.
But yeah, it's time to get you back on the podcast and talk about this pastoral ministry that you've gone into. Now, this is kind of a transition from what you were doing before. You were the director of liturgy and music, and I know there's some pieces in that, but just kind of tell the people a little bit about who you are, what you do, how you got here, kind of the quick 10,000-foot view of Mike Ward and what he does day in and day out.
Sure. So, yeah, I've been here in Northbrook for about 12 years now. Came in focusing on music and liturgy, and that was about the first 11 and a half years. Got married along the way. I met my wife here. We now have 4 kids. And then, you know, about a little over a year and a half ago, there was an opportunity in the Archdiocese of Chicago that I explored and discerned if that might be the right way for me to continue to use my gifts in the diocese. And for a number of reasons, it didn't work out the way we had thought as we began the process, but I just love the vision for what the position was supposed to be at this other parish that I brought it here to my pastor, and we took a while, about 3 months, to kind of discern it and see what it could look like. But through the gifts of the Holy Spirit and inspiring us in the right way, here we are. So I've been in this new director of pastoral ministry role for about a year. It'll be a year in January. And kind of the goal behind it is to divide up the leadership of a parish, right? We know our priests are overworked. You know, we're blessed that we have a pastor and an associate pastor, but that won't be the reality forever. So between myself, our director of finance and operations, and our pastor, we just kind of divide up the leadership and life of a parish, and I love it.
Yeah. And what I love about that is you discerned, like, the Lord is calling me to something new. And so many times that can be something that we're afraid to talk with our pastors about because it feels like, maybe I have to move on. Maybe there's something different here, though. And you were willing to bring that conversation to him. And we say that all the time. You just have to start the conversation.
Yeah.
And you don't get caught into, it's either I stay or I go. But the question is, hey, this is where I feel called. What would it take to get us to that point where we could begin operating in this way? I love that. So let's talk a little bit about this pastoral ministry then. And I want to really dive into, like, the conversations that you have, because I know that you've walked with people through, kind of the marriage prep stuff, planning for weddings, the funeral ministry as well, and having those conversations. What do you think it is that makes pastoral conversations, like, truly transformative?
You got to listen. You got to come from a place where you are present, you're fully present, and you listen. That's really hard to do, especially there's so much noise in our world, and we're so busy. And, a lot of times the most transformative conversations happen when you don't have any time for them to happen. You walk into it and it's like, okay, I've got 5 minutes at best. And, and those often can be the most profound experiences we have. but listen, be as present as you can be. Also, make it prayerful. I mean, our whole day, morning to night, but especially our day when we're here at a parish or in ministry of some capacity, just this offering and this prayerful sense. Whether it's, if you're with a family, with a marriage couple, beginning in prayer, could do that. Or it's a conversation you're absolutely dreading that you're about to go have. Take 5 seconds, come Holy Spirit, ground yourself in that. Allow the Holy Spirit to work through you to say, hopefully, more intelligent things than we can say on our own. Um, and then just hope that a relationship builds from there, trust builds from there, honest dialogue can come from there. Yeah, and just be a
I
vessel.
yeah, because I imagine there's all kinds of moments as you're accompanying people through these different stages. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but you do still are heavily involved with like funeral ministry
Yep,
and marriage ministry and all that stuff, liturgy
yep.
planning, and you're gonna have Sally Joe who comes in and her grandma passed away, and grandma's favorite song was Amarillo Sky, and they want to play that at her funeral, and they want to do that while they're I don't know sprinkling something somewhere or whatever, and you have to walk with them in those conversations. So how do you approach those, or can you give us kind of maybe some examples of like those moments where those difficult conversations become the most impactful moments?
Yeah, I mean, funerals is probably the easiest for me to talk about just because
Mhm.
we do, 60, 70 funerals a year. So I get quite a few opportunities for them. I love when I sit down with a family, the first thing we do is just, hey, tell me about mom, dad, whoever it is. And the beautiful conversation that flows from there most of the time is it's such a gift. So much so, I will often say to families, not to make this all about me, but thank you for sharing. And as you can imagine, this is a difficult ministry and it's difficult to do that, kind of a conversation like that. But trying to genuinely thank them because the hope I get hearing about these amazing people day in and day out is really a gift. And I want them to know that. And then oftentimes it brings, you could just tell like it takes some of the weight off of them. It takes some of the sadness, the loss off of them. And again, I don't want to make it about me, but I have found that just intentionally thanking them for sharing so much about their loved one um, has been great. But then with that, you get nuggets of information that you can use to make intentional choices about the funeral. You can do it with a wedding, you can do it with any liturgy we put together, but you can make intentional choices about we're going to go with this reading because of this story. We're going to go with this song because of that cross they carried in their life. And that trust builds in, an hour, hour and a half that you're with them. But then a request will come up like, hey, what about this song? But you've built that trust that you can say, well, no, it's not the most appropriate because of,
Mm.
you know? And there are times you have to make concessions. Like you're not going to win. You're not going to bat 1,000 every time, right? Like I will be the first to admit I have played Sweet Caroline in church more than I care to admit. Okay.
No, oh wow, lovely.
Okay. Uh, but you win some, you lose some. But I'm very confident in the fact that every family feels that they were heard, they were ministered to, and hopefully a seed is planted about their experience with us, whether they come back to our parish, go to their home parish, wherever it may be.
Yeah, I was gonna say because it makes sense to me. I mean, we know that people, especially people who have gone away from the church, they come back to church at these key moments, right?
Yep.
Obviously the sacramental things as they're growing up, but then marriage, the birth of a baby, right,
Hmm.
and then death. Like those are the times when people re-engage the church often, even if they've walked away from it. That's the time, and so these moments of conversation are real moments where like the weight of heaven and hell are pressing up against each other in a person's mind, in their heart, and in their soul. And we have the opportunity to enter into an effective dialogue. So I know you're really well connected with people in similar positions and all across the archdiocese. And I'm sure you guys share stories. Where do parish leaders unintentionally then shut down some of these conversations that really could have been life changing for the people coming in? Where do you see some of those conversations go wrong?
The famous quote, but that's how we've always done it.
My favorite quote.
It comes at us, and that's different. We don't do it that way. Um, and other times where it's just downright too hard. Um, and I get that, right? Because we are busy and we've got so much going on in our personal lives and our professional lives. Yes, we are all busy. Um, but often, we turn ourselves, well, that's going to be so hard. It's going to take so much time. Or do you know the number of volunteers it's going to take to pull that off? It's similar to the resources of volunteer and just people power. We don't have the financial resources.
Mm.
And a lot of times it cuts us off. And
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, no. I was just so yeah. How do you approach that then? Because I mean, I hear you saying like, I hear you seeing these things, but there's got to be like key moments where. How do you kind of design that then for yourself, or how do you approach it? Because a leader needs to, someone like you needs to pay attention to what's going on in their heart and their mind before they
Yeah.
enter into these moments too, right? I mean, how am I either setting myself aright or prejudicing myself against this? Like, how do you kind of approach those things?
Well, I think you're listening and you're present. It's
Yeah.
as best you're able to do, right? Trust me, I say that and I'm almost like laughing because, I'm a father of four. It's really hard to be fully present
It's all in
here,
the ideal.
Yeah, right. Um, so, but in being fully present and kind of trying to see what's behind it, right? Like one of my kids love watching Shrek right now.
Mm.
Shrek talks about, they're like an onion and all the layers. Didn't think I was going to bring a Shrek
That
reference.
that's a throwback, dude. I have seen Shrek so many times.
Yeah,
I must have been in middle school or high school
yeah.
when it came out, and every bus trip we took, Shrek got put in. I've seen that movie.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure I could quote it word for word
Yes, love it.
watching it.
Yeah, but in being present, seeing what's behind it, right? Like, is we don't have enough people, finances, whatever. Is that a cop out? Is that a concern that we hear over and over again? What's behind it, right?
Mm,
People are too busy. Okay, is that because the idea we've come up with really isn't that engaging? Because there's plenty of stuff that both in the church and outside of the church that people will make the time for. If it's good, if it's fulfilling for them, they will make the time, no matter how busy they are. So,
mhm.
seeing what's really the crux of it.
Yeah, and
Um,
I can see like you because it's not. I want to make sure for our listeners too. This isn't just funeral ministry that you do, right? So there,
yeah,
you get
no,
people coming into you all the time. They're like, "Hey, I have this idea for initiative. Like, hey, you guys should start a podcast." I think
yeah,
everybody's hungry for something like that,
yeah,
and you have to weigh the possibility of it, the
yeah,
resources. Is this one person coming to you saying everybody wants it, or is there really like a movement of the Holy Spirit going on? And you have to not only be personally ready to receive it, but also to be spiritually ready to discern it.
yeah. Well, this approach is very similar to a conversation I had earlier this morning. So, this past weekend we had a beautiful social breakfast, as our Knights of Columbus called it, um, because they wanted to know their people to know they're more than just pancakes there.
We're still here.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's this awesome buffet line of
Hmm.
food, but we also tie it in with a parish ministry fair, right? So you come, you share a meal, and you get to see all of the ministries that happen here in the parish, or those that commit the time to be there that morning. Anyway, um, but just in discerning, so we were talking this morning, like this was great, huge success. Let's do it again next year, but can we do it more? And then giving the intentionality of why, as as the leader, why more would be helpful, but then empowering the knight that was in my office to go back to his committee and discern together, can we actually do it?
Mhm.
You know,
Say more about that. What does more mean when you say more, when you're looking at something and discerning it? What did more mean for you in that?
in this case, more frequently, like, can we get our parishioners and our ministry leads together in this intentional way more often than just once a year?
Uh,
And I'm ready. They may come back and say, no, it's way too much because we also have our fish fry in the spring, in Lent, and it's too much. Fine, fine. But at least I ask the question, can we do more? Can we do it differently than we've always done it?
mhm,
And, who knows what'll come from it. And appreciating the tremendous amount of work and the huge success that these guys made it become. But then that could be true in your parish for your women's club, for any ministry, right? Like
mhm,
this model, this conversation can work with the parish fundraiser you're struggling with. Um, Maybe even how to change, the way the music that's done in your parish and how the liturgy is celebrated. That's a great hot button topic too. But I think that the challenge is, as a leader, is to have your vision, have an idea of where you want it to go, be open and humble enough that you're going to take twists and turns on the way,
mhm.
but have an idea.
I love that you said that because we say all the time on the podcast that you need to lead from vision, not just your vision, but discerned vision. Like, what has God called you to do? So, can I put you on the spot a
Please,
little
yeah.
bit? That how have you discerned that? Like, what is Mike Ward's calling in the parish of Saint Norbert and Our Lady of the Brook? What is your call there, and how does that then inform how you lead?
So when we started this intentional renewal effort, it was part of the Renew My Church effort that Chicago was doing, and after the structural phase was done, parishes were encouraged to do their spiritual renewal in their own parishes. So we met, and out of that, we discerned the 4 pillars of our parish: that we journey together, celebrate together, belong together, and witness together.
Mhm.
And for me, that's the direction, right? Does something we're doing help us to journey, belong, celebrate, and witness together?
And that's the power of taking the time to say, this is our vision. This is what
Yeah.
God has called us to do, because you can measure everything against that statement. I love it because you've got some numbers that you were sharing
Yeah.
before. Are you comfortable sharing those now? That just to let our
Sure.
listeners know, when you lead with vision and
Yeah.
you measure your actions and decisions by that, these are some of the things that can turn out. Go ahead.
Yeah. So numbers is hard in ministry, right?
Yeah,
Like,
oh yeah,
to have tangible numbers, numbers aren't everything, but
they do
they can
matter.
be helpful, right?
Yeah.
So some of the numbers right now here in our parish, right? Our school is as high as it's ever been since in my time here, right? Now that number's 220, and for some listeners, you may be jealous at that, or you may laugh like, "Huh, you only have 220." But for us, that's a huge win. Like,
It's growth.
it's
It's
growth,
growth.
and it's steady growth. It's not like we were at 175 last year and like 50 kids showed up in the neighborhood. No, it's like we've been growing this way for several years now, and sustaining the growth.
Hmm.
Our faith formation program continues to have very strong, solid numbers, and not just in the sacramental years. Like, the numbers are good across the program. Um, our mass attendance. So every October, Chicago does a count, and you're supposed to count every person that's in the pew, right? So 2 stats I'm geeking out about with these. First, our 9:30 mass, that's kind of our big mass. Previously, 300, 350 people, like, that felt full. This year, 3 of the 4 masses were over 450 people, with one weekend pushing 500 people at a single mass.
Hmm.
Then our entire October count is within 300 people of what we were in 2019, before COVID, what feels like a lifetime ago. And in 2019, we had 6 masses across 2 worship sites. And here we are now with 4 masses in 1 worship site, and our numbers are great. I mean,
Yeah.
again, numbers aren't everything, but it's a chance for us to celebrate the growth we've had based on this vision we've been working with.
Absolutely. So, yeah, and now I feel like we're branching out from our original topic, but I'm fascinated. What have been the intentional efforts that you've kind of identified that seem to have allowed you to make it intentional, sustainable growth?
I in some ways I think we're still figuring that out exactly.
Mhm.
Um, because not much has changed yet. We've got, I'm in a new position. We have several new staff people on, which has just brought some fresh energy to the place. Um, I kind of feel like our pastor has also gotten his sea legs under him, using that expression. Because the poor guy came July of 2019, was sick for Christmas of 2019, and then 2020 hit,
Mhm.
right? So he didn't have that, chance to get involved, and then, add a pandemic and whatever. But it's like we've been getting a lot of the momentum going in the right direction. We have, a leadership team that we established back when John was working with us, and we still have that going, but we've been intentional about when the leadership team meets, and we're intentional about other staff meetings beyond that. So we have dedicated time for the pastoral staff to meet every month, separate from the full staff. We have dedicated time for the formation team to meet, separate from the full staff. Then we have dedicated time for the leadership team. We have dedicated time for the full staff. But then we also have dedicated time just to come together informally, right? We have a coffee clutch, we call it, once a month, where we can just come together and share whatever comes up, from movies and sports and life to, every once in a while, some work conversation comes up too.
Mhm.
Um, but we make time to have lunch together, either in the office or to go somewhere. If it's been a particularly stressful day, we go have a soda pop across the street just to decompress and be with one another together. Just to build that camaraderie among the team as well.
It sounds like that's maybe some of the secret sauce there because the number of parishes that don't have intentional communion with one another and a rhythm of meeting that allows them to be accountable to the vision, to what the pastor is trying to do in the parish. And simply by putting in those pieces, like an intentional rhythm of meetings, an intentional rhythm of accountability, and then intentionally building the team up as a communion of one another. I mean, that seems like it's unlocked an ability to all get on the same page and move the same direction.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's helped us build trust among each other, right? Because, Father Chris will always start every meeting with scripture reflection, right? And I'll be honest, I'm guilty of it as well as other colleagues. It's like, right, here we go again.
Come on.
Like, or
I
it's
already
like,
talked
it's
to
one,
Jesus today.
right? Or it's one of those busy days and you're hoping this meeting can be an hour and it's a
Mhm.
reading from the gospel. It's like, really, really, Father, like, but that has allowed us to share perspectives on the gospel, which then often lead to struggles and joys we're having in our own life. But there are also other times where there's just not much to share. Fine.
Mhm.
But we know that that's a place where we can share stuff about us. And that's one of the things, like, I'll talk to my brother, and, my brother discerned a vocation to the priesthood for a while and has a theology undergrad degree. And so he thought that was going to be his path. And for whatever reason, that's not been his path. And he's got a great path that he is on. Um, but we talk about, like, just the difference of him being in more corporate America and how things have to be. And then the conversations I get to have by being in ministry full time. He's like, I could never talk about that with my colleagues. And yet here we encourage it.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, so in that vein, kind of getting back on like
Mhm.
track with what we're talking about then, what are the conversations that you think most parishes avoid that get in the way of that growth or keep them from being able to unlock that growth, kind of like we've talked about with you that you've just mentioned? If they just have this one conversation more regularly, it would unlock that for them: more growth, more success, more joy in ministry.
I've got a couple. If I
Sure. Yeah.
So instead of defaulting to why it won't work, force yourself to think through why it just might work.
Oh
Just
man, that one hits for me actually.
right.
Because I do go to, this is why this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
Or if it's not going to work, this is why,
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one.
Let's no. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy, right? It might cost too much money, or we don't even have the facility to hold it. But why might it work?
Mm,
Who knows? Um, and I think the other thing, kind of along that line of if you've got people interested, you know, mo- for the adults specifically, like trust them, trust them to be the adults and to do what they're say they're going to do. You're going to get
mm.
burned. Spoiler, like you are going to get burned sometimes, but you're also going to be amazed when you treat people like an adult and let them kind of do what they say they're going to do, and then they actually do it, and it's kind of amazing.
Pure magic.
um,
Delegation,
yeah,
in a sense.
yeah. Um, but kind of along like the other lines, like don't let the finances stop you, right? Like if it costs too much, find out what it costs. Because Catholics, very broad, very stereotypically, love to, pay for things as opposed to just, hey, here's 5, here's 10, here's 20 in the collection plate. I don't really know where it goes, but I got to do it. But when you put an intentional ask behind it, the fruits are amazing, right? There's a guy here in the parish that loves to talk about the piano that we now have, which I just posted on social media earlier today. It's 10 years old today. Like 10 years ago, we got the piano donated or it delivered.
Hmm.
But leading up to it, you know, we made an intentional ask like, here's the old piano, here are the cracks in the soundboard, here's why it can't be repaired, and here's what it costs to replace it with something comparable. Could we have gone less and got a lesser quality instrument? Absolutely. But here's what we need for apples to apples.
Hmm.
And within 2 weeks, we had the $75,000 we needed for this piano.
But being afraid to make the ask.
Yeah.
That's if you don't ask for help, the answer
Right.
is no.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
Yeah. But, and I think, to take it along the ask too of as leaders in parishes, just looking at staffing, like don't be afraid to build the staff you need versus having to live with the staff you inherited. Right.
Ooh, say more about that.
Like whether it's, whether you're the pastor that's leading the parish, whether you're the deacon administrator or a lay administrator or whatever your parish structure might be, do you have the roles you need to get your job done? And if the answer is no, okay, what can we change? Right. As we were discerning my position, we had a parishioner offer her gifts of consultation, right? She's been a consultant for various places. So she took time to meet with all of the staff people and present to Father Chris, hey, this is what you have and this is what you need. And here are my recommendations, right?
Hmm.
One opinion, he could listen to it or not, but at least take that time to look at your staff. Do you have what you need? And then if you need something more and it costs more money, don't be afraid to go get it, you know? And that you can find that in rural parishes, in affluent suburban parishes, in you can find it if you ask.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And, I just got done. I like something you pulled out of there, and if I can play with it for a little bit, I just got done reading. It's called Traction by
Okay.
Gino Wickman, and one of his big things, he's got 6 components of a business or whatever, and or of an organization, and one of them is the people component. So there's
Mhm.
2 main pieces to the people component. One is having the right seats, and the next one then is filling those seats with the right people. And so, but first you have to have the right seat. You can
Yeah.
have the right person, but if they're the right person for the wrong seat, it's not going to fulfill the mission. It's not going to serve the mission. So you have to take time as an organization. And that doesn't mean you can't say, hey, actually, we need someone to focus on this, and then look at your personnel and say, who's the right person for this, and see how to make that work too.
Yeah.
But then even, further down the line, you might know, okay, well, what we know is we actually need to add another staff person. Well, you can't afford a staff person. Well, maybe not right now. Okay, well, what do you need to do over the course of the next year to be able to afford another staff person? What are the pieces we need to place? Actually, it's about asking those right questions, which I think is really kind of, if I
Right.
were to distill what you're saying, is being ready not just to make the ask, but to take the time to ask the right questions in order to respond to the vision, the call, the leadership of the pastor, and move the ball forward on the mission.
Yeah. And so much of it then circles back to trust and relationship, right? Like, at the beginning, we talked about that in the context of funerals or the context of wedding planning or whatever, but the trust among your staff too of, okay, you're going to have this difficult conversation or something needs to change. You know that you're coming from a place of trust and respect as opposed to just, hey, I'm the boss. I've decreed from above. This is what we're doing. And here's the change, like it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to make people a part of the conversation. You still have to lead in a specific direction, but allow people to be a part and let that simmer with you.
Yeah.
Now, I'm wondering, we've spent a lot of time talking about conversations that need to be had, the questions. Can you tell us about a time where you had a conversation that surprised you with the impact that came out on the other side of it?
Yeah. The one that came to mind was one that we had at the diocesan level. Um, you know, there were two. There were
Most people
two.
are surprised when real impact comes out of those, huh?
Yeah, right.
I'm
you know,
sorry. I'm so
there
sorry,
was
everybody.
well, there was a quick one. There was a quick one, like similar to like conversations, John, you and I'll have of like, oh, this is what I'll do. There was a young music director that was in that awkward transition of new pastor has come in and the current business managers trying to establish themselves with that pastor and get control on the budget and all right, music, you're getting slash X%. And I said, how would you handle this? Well, start meeting with your pastor, like have some conversations with your pastor and you two, not with the, just you two, get on board and make sure your vision's working together. And a couple of weeks later, like, I get feedback like, holy, that worked.
Hmm.
So it was one of those, like the advice and the stuff that, we talk about and you talk about on the podcast, like this does work when you're bold enough to give it a try. But going back to the diocesan story, so back in June, we had a massive Thanksgiving for our very own Pope Leo the 14th, right? Um, and if you didn't hear about it, it was at Sox Park. Okay. So we had the ability to rent out Sox Park. There was an event that happened leading up to Mass. So from, it was part worship, part witness, part stuff, and then had Mass celebrating Trinity Sunday in Sox Park. Right. And the conversations that they put this committee together to it. So originally they put a committee together on a Monday and they wanted to do it on Saturday. 6 days to put this massive Thanksgiving together at Sox Park. And the Saturday they wanted to do it happened to be the ordination Saturday for the priest of the Archdiocese of Chicago. Fortunately, they realized that wasn't going to work so well, so they moved it to June. And so it gave us, a couple more weeks to plan it. And we got to go through the Mass and intentionally pick everything we did, which was awesome. And like
Mm.
by doing that, we came up with some ideas like, the common introit to the Gloria in excelsis Deo from either from the Latin and the Novus Ordo or um, the traditional, the Latin Mass as well. But like using that and then tying it into the Mass of St. Anne Gloria to wed the two styles together.
Mm.
And then being intentional with every language choice for the psalm and for communion pieces and just being able to, so those conversations were incredible, right? Just
Yeah.
personally for us on the committee. But then to see what the end result was for the Church of Chicago, right? To how that intentionality and that commitment to the vision. And, when we said, like, to get the musicians and the resources and everything we need to, it's going to cost this. And, you present that and they're like, you got to cut it. We can't. Like, this is the source and summit of our faith. This is the source and summit of the Church of Chicago we're gathering. We're going to hold firm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Like, oh, we're like, wait, that worked?
Hard to
Like,
argue
yeah.
with that.
um, but then you saw it and you saw the reactions on social media. And I remember, I text somebody that was on the committee because you saw positive reactions to it from both sides of the church, right? And unfortunately, we know we've got the divide of the trads and the progressives, and we've got that divide in our church, for better or for worse. But there were people on every side talking about the profound experience they had celebrating mass in a baseball stadium. And you heard clips and saw clips on social media, and the sound that was made and the joy on people's face. And you saw the various priests and bishops in procession, and they just overcome with joy walking out to celebrate this mass. Yeah, I mean,
Well, so what I hear in that, and to boil it up or to scale it up, scale
yeah,
it down,
right.
what I hear in that is just the intentionality of prayerly approaching that task. Because it could be really easy for someone in a liturgy director role to say, okay, these are the readings, so we're just going to go with this, we're just going to go with this, and we're just going to go with this, and just like plan out a whole year in an hour, 4 hours,
Yep,
and just be done.
yep,
Same thing happens in, you've got people who are doing the mass readings. It's this spiritual preparation that happens ahead of time that bears fruit on the other side that we don't always get to see too. Even somebody who you can tell the difference between somebody that walked up to lector and didn't even look at the reading ahead of time, and somebody that took a handful of times beforehand to really practice their cadence, their rhythm, to practice the words. You can tell that difference, and it resonates difference, and the output on the other side is beauty, which is transcendental, which pierces the heart every time.
every
So I
time.
mean, that I love that. Yeah, no, thank you for saying that. That's a great story of how conversation behind the scene
Yeah.
bears fruit, and this is, you get to play on a big stage,
Yeah,
and that
well,
makes a
right,
difference, but
and that's and it's unique, right? Because we had funding that's not generally available, right? It was
mhm,
a unique opportunity, but so much of that intentionality that can happen with your local liturgy committee. That can help with the executive board of your women's council, of your senior
mhm,
club, of whatever ministry it is. But can you be intentional about what you're doing, right? We have Christmas coming up, right? And yes, do the standards of "O come all ye faithful" and "Angels we have heard on high" and "Joy to the world" and "Silent Night," do those work well? Yes, that there's a reason why they work so well. But one of the people on the committee, a priest here in Chicago, had a great line that he's said often is, "But every moment we do it, it's new," right?
mm,
So this Christmas, yes, is Christmas, but it's Christmas in 2025, right? And there may be different text or different things that speak to your community this Christmas than it did last Christmas or it will next Christmas. Same thing with Easter. Same thing with insert Sunday in ordinary time. Same thing with the parish fundraiser you're working on. Every time we do it, it's a new moment. And, Gaudium et Spes, I love this quote. I refer to it often. We're called to respond to the signs of the time.
mm.
And are we doing that, responding to the signs of the time in this moment, or are we just doing it how we've always done it because that's easy?
Yeah, a lot of what you're naming here to me points to a pattern we do see in churches, which is why Catholic ministry professionals exist,
Hmm.
is that the desire is there. People want to enter creatively into the ministry they do in the way that you're talking about. That the people are there, the people want to receive that beauty, but they often miss like the clarity like that you got from your vision that was in your heart and in your pastor's heart that you just like discerned and discovered as you approach this new way, this new job,
Yeah.
aligning your expectations behind that, but then also, okay, well, I need to make the maintenance of my work more predictable so that I have time to creatively enter into this with the Lord so that he can work through me. We can have more pastoral conversations and turn the fire drill of our work into moments
Yeah.
for real grace to operate.
Yeah. And you need to own that time for yourself, right?
Mhm.
So, before we hopped on, John and I were talking about, the room that I'm sitting in right now because, he knows the layout of our office, right? And, so I'm up on the second floor. I'm away from where my office is. And sometimes I need to remove myself from my office to get something done, right? Um, it's busy. We say again and again, people are busy, but you need to remove yourself. And sometimes you have a space to do that, right? Sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's your commute in, right? And, have a running note going on your phone, of just ideas that come up and you can flesh those out later or more specifics. And, don't write and drive, but, have Siri or Google like help you out and keep filling that in. But allow yourself time wherever that may be to think and to plan ahead.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Amen. Well, Mike, this has been a great conversation. Is there anywhere you want to invite listeners to connect with you or follow some of the work you guys do or reach out if they want to continue this conversation with
Yeah, if
pastoral
you want
ministry?
to reach out, you can get a hold of me through our parish website. Northbrookcatholic.church is our website. St. Norbert and Our Lady of the Brook Parish on Facebook. NBK Catholic for Northbrook Catholic on Instagram. Yeah, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to help out if I ever could. It's we don't have all the answers. I will never say that. And what works for us may not work for you, and vice versa. But I'm happy to help facilitate the conversations. And John, it's always good to be with you. I wish we didn't live so far apart, but
Yeah, me
always
too,
good to
man.
be together.
I miss work. Well, it's one of these days I'm going to get you to move over here to Iowa with me.
All right, I'm up for that.
And as for our parish leaders that are listening, I do have all the answers, so feel free to reach out to me. If you're
Okay,
hearing this and you're
th-
thinking, we do need to get better at having the conversations that actually move the mission forward, they move our people forward, but our team maybe is stretched thin or we don't know where to start. That's where we come in from Catholic ministry professionals. And I'd encourage you to book a discovery call today, and we'll just walk with you step by step through that process of getting your team aligned, clarifying expectations, and building a structure where conversations like these can thrive. So, thank you for listening to this episode. If you found it helpful, don't let it be just another good idea, but text it to a priest or friend in ministry and start that conversation today. And with that, we'll see you in the vineyard.